Welcome to Politics for Happy People. So glad that you are with us today. This is the place where we have fun conversations about serious topics. And today, the serious topic we're going to discuss, among other things, is the North Carolina state budget. Drum roll. It has arrived. Ashley, how excited are you?
I've been waiting on bated breath for this day.
Have you? It's like Christmas. It's like Christmas. And actually, when you hang around the legislature for a while and do any kind of lobbying work down there, it is kind of lobbyist Christmas. It's kind of funny because you basically, you work all year to figure out what's going to be in there. And some people get coal and some people get exactly what they wanted. And people's moods are dramatically affected by that. And so we're going to talk about some of the stuff that's in there today. So what do you got?
Well, in looking over the budget, there are a couple things that stood out to me. And the first one is the continuation of funding for pregnancy resource centers. And this is something that has been done for a while now in North Carolina. And it goes basically to, there are two different sort of groups that this funding goes to. One is Human Coalition, and one is Carolina Pregnancy Care Fellowship. And altogether, it looks like we have about $7 million going to funding these pregnancy resource centers. And these are pro-life groups that are providing support and assistance to mothers, most of which who have unplanned pregnancies, but I think any woman could go there and get support. So things like diapers, parenting classes, education and support for health challenges that they are having. They can get ultrasounds. It's a wonderful way to support women in that time. And they really, they care for women during pregnancy. They also continue that relationship on with the parenting classes after the baby is born. They help women understand what their options are that will be protecting life, such as adoption. And it's a wonderful resource for our women in North Carolina, and we're very happy that we are continuing to value life in our state by supporting these pregnancy centers.
These are kind of the anti-Planned Parenthood organizations, and Planned Parenthood, rightly, in my opinion, takes a lot of heat because they claim to be about women's health. And really, for the most part, when you come in pregnant, they have one option for you. And if you don't want to get an abortion, they'll let you leave in most cases, I believe. But they're not there to offer material support to encourage you emotionally or practically in the steps toward actually being a mother, being a parent. That's what these pregnancy centers do. They are unambiguously, and they should be, pro-life, but they are really kind of the counterbalance to a movement that pushes a lot of people and incentivizes abortion, that choice for a lot of young women. And so it is wonderful to know that there is a network of these pregnancy centers. And I'm going to assume most of our audience is aware that they are out there. But it is, I think, right and good and appropriate of the North Carolina legislatures to support that option, because it is unambiguously the right choice. We want to provide resources so they can make that.
Another thing that these centers do that I didn't mention, they provide post-abortion counseling. And a lot of times women will come to these centers after they've had an abortion because they can't go back to the center where they had the abortion emotionally. They cannot return. And so they'll get their post-visit at these pregnancy centers, or they'll just come there, maybe the next time they're pregnant and they had an abortion the last time. And their counselors are skilled at helping women heal from that spiritually and emotionally. And I love the way women are supported in this environment.
Yeah, Ashley, you mentioned there that women just can't go back to the place where they got their abortion. I also think it's true that the place where they got their abortion does not want them to come back. Planned Parenthood is not eager to comfort and help and assist emotionally the women who were just in there for an abortion. The premise, a primary premise of the entire movement and the entire argument is that there is no harm, that there is no cost, that this is going to be good for you and make you happy. So they are not in a position where they are going to simply, give you a hug, talk you through it, help you come to forgiveness of yourself and, and from God and all of that. That's just not who they are. So yes, it's true, I think, that many women do not want to go back to that place after making that decision because it's traumatic. But those places are not wanting them to come back. They don't offer the services anywhere. So there really is this space in the culture where do women go when they have done something that they deeply regret to receive healing and help, and that's part of what these organizations do. But of course, primarily they're trying to avoid that decision in the first place.
Yeah.
Now, Ashley, this actually brings up one question, and I think I may have gotten ahead of myself in the conversation because we're talking about what the right things for government to be funding is right now, and this is one of the things they put in the budget. But I think it'd be helpful before we go through the rest of the things in the budget that caught our attention to think about whether there is there such thing as a biblical budget? Is there a Christian or biblical way to think about something kind of academic and nerdy like a state budget for those of us who are not accountants, right? Just the word budget just kind of makes us a little bit sleepy. But is there a biblical way of thinking about this in your mind?
Absolutely. I mean, I think of just more broadly the role of government in promoting good. And so we want to make sure that the money that we are spending is going towards things that are good. And we also, I think, want to be responsible with our money. We don't want to waste it, right? We have to be good stewards of resources. So when I think of a biblical budget, I think those are the two things that I think. We want to fund things and incentivize things that are good. And we also want to be thrifty and responsible.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And the principle that you just referred to there of, funding things that are good, I think is half of what Paul talks about in Romans chapter 13, where he describes that God's design for government is to reward good and to punish evil. And so as we try to do things as a community and as a civilization, as a state that rewards good, it goes without saying what you should not do is reward what is evil and what is counterproductive, right? So that's kind of the balance, I think, at a very high level. And I think certainly we're going to talk about some of the ways in which I think maybe people of goodwill and good intention can disagree about whether a particular expenditure is good or not in that sense. But yeah, I think that provides a framework. And that's one of the reasons why funding a pregnancy center that's going to encourage women not to get abortions is good. It's also the reason why we would say funding Planned Parenthood, which has been a very long conversation, would be bad because they are out there hoping that women will get an abortion. And because that is it is unambiguously a moral evil, we don't want government funding that. And that's a way to look at that.
Yeah. I was just reading this week in 1 Kings, when Solomon became king, he asked God for wisdom to discern between good and evil. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we do need God to give us wisdom. Sometimes it's obvious, like you said, it is good to promote programs that are encouraging life, and it is bad to promote or fund programs that are about ending life. But there are other areas, as you said, where you can have a good debate about it. And so, yeah, let's move through this.
And we're actually going to get into one of those. And here's a highlight,
Okay.
A top line number for the budget. This new budget that North Carolina has passed, governor just signed, spends $34.4 billion. That's up from $30.9 billion in the last budget. That's $3.5 billion, or about an 11% increase. So we're spending more. Nobody's surprised by that. We always kind of spend more because the needs are growing. Is that too much more? people will debate that. But here's one thing that we spent a lot of money on is teacher pay. And this is something that everybody running for re-election this November who voted for this budget is going to talk about, how they increased pay for teachers. And it especially increases starting teacher pay to $53,000, just under $54,000 a year. This puts North Carolina at number 1 in the South in starting teacher pay, and that was kind of a meaningful data point, I think, for our legislators. It also provides a series of bonuses for teachers in addition to these teacher raises. Now, I have this is one of those issues that for me is kind of challenging, because we all want our friends and neighbors to have more money. We all value teachers. My wife is an educator, not in the government system, but she's an educator. My sister has been, is not now. My grandmother was a career, kindergarten teacher. We all know and love teachers, and we want them to be compensated for it. But the thing I cannot get over is the fact that there's essentially no connection between how much money you spend on education and how well students do for learning. And we have all sorts of concerning data about whether or not kids are actually learning the things that they're supposed to be learning. Are they reading and doing math at grade level? And those numbers are very discouraging. But we consider it to be an unambiguous moral good to raise the pay the pay of the teachers, because we assume, I think, that if we pay them better, the outcomes are going to come for kids. But there's lots of evidence that that is, in fact, not true. Is that the wrong way for me to be, thinking about this, Ashley?
I'll admit I am not an expert on this topic. However, I'm very sympathetic to the argument that raising teacher pay will improve education. And the reason that I think that is because I think if teachers are paid well and paid for their professionalism, that it will attract talent to the schools, because no one wants to go to a job and teaching is hard work. It really is hard work. You're on your feet all day. You don't have a moment's rest, probably, or much. Right. Because they're kids and they always need something. But it's also, intellectual, because you're teaching them. It's not just childcare. And I do think it's hard work. And so
it is hard work. There's no doubt that it's hard work.
Again,
yes.
my children aren't in public schools, but I very much have a heart for public schools. I want them to be really good. I want them to be strong. I am sympathetic to teacher raises and to paying teachers, just because I don't think if we're not paying teachers, I don't see why anyone would enter that line of work, because people have to provide for their families. So that's sort of how I think about it. But I know that there are all sorts of complicated things when it comes to, where is the money actually going and all of that. I don't know, but I do think teachers should be paid.
Teachers should be paid. It's just the fact that we can prove, and we don't have the time to go through all of this right now, but you can prove pretty conclusively that paying teachers does not result in better educational outcomes for kids. Now, that doesn't mean it's the teacher's fault, right? This is not a criticism of teachers. This is kind of a commentary on the system where we all just applaud that this is happening because we like teachers, and we especially like our kids' teacher, probably, and so we want to think of them as being taken care of, right? And so all of that is warm and fuzzy. I'm happy, right? So we get good vibes from it, but it is a mistake if we assume that because we are quote unquote investing more in education, that means that kids are going to do better educationally, and that's just not so. And the reasons that is not so are very complicated. Most of it starts at home, parents, those environments, things like that. Of course, you want teachers to not be stressed out, but it's just kind of a, to me, it's just a thing to know. It's a much more complicated issue than that. And I think the reason why it gets featured so much is because it messages really well for all the reasons that we've just discussed. A lot of us know teachers and are teachers, and so yay, let's help the teachers. But that's just as good for the people who are running on helping the teachers. It's actually better for the people who are running on let's help the teachers than it is for the students. And that's just That's just the way it is right now. But
There clearly are challenges with the system that need to be addressed, though, because as you said, test scores and all the benchmarks for, how are our kids doing in schools? What are they learning? None of them are where they need to be. So there are challenges that need to be addressed there.
And there's important context here, right? Because a lot has happened in school choice in North Carolina that's been very positive. The opportunity scholarships that now exist, and there is real school choice in the state now. And I think, in one sense, the reason that these teacher pay raises were put into this budget, in addition to the fact that inflation has happened and things are just more expensive, so raises, in that way are appropriate. This is in some ways a rebuttal to the argument that has been made for the last few years that public schools are being defunded because we have created school choice. And so I, of course, big proponent of school choice, don't want to ignore the fact that there has been massive progress in the state on that issue in recent years. But let's just know in the back of your mind when everybody's saying, yay, we gave more money to education, it might feel good, but does it do good? Maybe. That's kind of where we'll
at. See.
Yeah. What do you got next, Ashley?
Well, it's also in education. So we put $5 million towards the use of AI education tools. So contracts with companies like Conmigo and Magic School. And these programs are meant to support teachers with lesson plan development and to support students with lesson comprehension. So they do two different things. And the budget also has language that requires the Department of Public Instruction to adopt standards for teaching artificial intelligence and to draft a model AI policy for school boards. So they're asking the Department of Public Instruction to kind of set up some parameters and best practices for how AI is going to be used in schools so that it can be used ethically and safely and responsibly and all that, which of course is a completely new frontier for everyone. How do we incorporate AI into education? It's here to stay. It's not going away. How do we help the kids use it responsibly and not get stupider?
Well, and that is the challenge of AI in education is can you just never use your brain anymore and still get results and academically, and there are not clear rules that come from the legislature. It's basically just a tip of the cap to the issue and the fact that this is a challenge we have to confront. OSPI, the superintendent of education, they have to tackle this issue in a way that the legislature could not because they have more time to invest in this, and that's kind of the legislature's way of delegating this task, but recognizing this is something that has to be dealt with. We have to provide some guidance to the schools because it's not just, hey, let's make sure kids aren't cheating. That's part of it. But there's also all of the stuff. I mean, you talk about, porn in education, in schools and school libraries and all of those things, right? With the advances of these new technologies, there's all sorts of ways for kids to get hurt with these chatbots. To the extent that, what extent, if any, will they be used in schools?
We've talked about that before, yeah.
That's right. There's a ton of stuff here, and there is direction now to, begin the process of wrapping our minds around this and creating some rules.
Well, you mentioned not cheating. It's kind of like, what is cheating anymore? Like, how much are we allowed to use AI to assist our thinking, and what is plagiarism?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like an old fuddy-duddy because it's like the arguments that my parents were making about calculators. You shouldn't use calculator. You should be able to do that in your head or at least on a piece of paper, right? Don't use those tools. It makes you dumber. And they might have been right. But calculators are everywhere, easily accessible, produces the right results. Is it cheating? Is it lazy to use a calculator? I mean, at one point I was being told it was. I no longer think that.
Well, you really like AI. I mean, you use it a lot. You've adopted it.
I use it all the time
into your work. So you're not opposed to it.
Yes.
But
I
think it's
all.
hard. I think it is. We have to be and we've talked about this before, but as with social media, we have to be careful with the kids, right? Because we didn't grow up with AI. We learned how to think, we learned how to write, we learned how to do all of our own research. Now we can use AI as a tool to help us and make us faster, but we want kids to learn all of that stuff as well.
That's right.
And so
That's
how
right.
do we, I'm really glad that they're asking the Department of Public Instruction to put some thought into this.
Agreed. My next thing that caught my attention in the budget, this is kind of good for everybody. There is an income tax reduction. There is the new rate. It's going from about 4%, 3.99, down to 3.49% in 27 to 29 in those years, and all the way down to eventually 2.99% for the 2033 to 2034 biennium. So there are gradual reductions in the income tax rate, and it could actually go lower than that in this new budget after 2034 if revenue triggers are met, which means if the state is proving that they are bringing in a certain amount of revenue through other sources other than the income tax, then they will continue to reduce the income tax rate. But that results in ultimately like a 25% reduction in the state income tax between now and 2033. And, all God's people say amen. So who doesn't like that, right? So I'm excited about it.
Great.
As a
Yeah,
taxpayer.
more money in people's pockets.
That's right. So,
Yeah.
So the budget has grown, but the income tax rate is going down, and that means clearly that the economy is growing, and when there's more activity, they're raising state revenues in other ways. So that makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other?
That's great.
Yeah. What do you got next, Ashley?
So the next one that I have is released time for religious instruction. So the Supreme Court set a precedent that requires students to be able to leave school for religious instruction, but it doesn't weigh in on whether that would be an excused or an unexcused absence. And the policy surrounding this up until this point has been up to school boards. But the state has said that students can have release time to have religious instruction, and it doesn't obviously specify which type, so it could be any. But the three qualifications are: it has to be off school property, it has to be privately funded, and the parents have to give permission. But if all those three things are in place, then the students can leave campus for 1 to 4 hours a day, I believe it is, and have religious instruction. So this is great because there are programs like LifeWise, which is kind of rapidly expanding across the country, and they're partnering with churches, and students are able, if the parents agree, the students are able to opt into this program, and they can leave school for a couple hours a day to get really good Bible instruction through this program, LifeWise, that's partnering with local churches around the country and our state. Yes.
Does it specify how often you can get an excused absence for this?
At
Because
least an hour,
was
but
aware
no
of
more than 4 hours of excused absence per week.
No more than 4 per week, because that's a lot. And the state is
No
required.
more than 4 hours.
Okay. I mean, yeah, and you talk about LifeWise, and it is a great program. There's been so much, cultural kind of wrestling around this idea of religious instruction that happens in school. You have a Bible club on campus, and is that a violation of separation of church and state? And it's not. But these programs, which would then be kind of adjacent, and here's kind of a ministry opportunity for people to know if you have a church near a school, is that you can run a Bible study out of your church near the school, and the law requires, providing mom and dad are supportive, there's those students to be given excused absences to participate in that. It's a way of recognizing that the state is not the one to do the religious instruction, and frankly, at this point, based on what I know about a lot of the teachers, I basically agree with that. But the instruction can happen
Yeah.
adjacent, nearby, in cooperation with the parents, and the school cannot get in the way of that. And I know one of the challenges that this is trying to prevent is students actually being punished in some way, sometimes small, sometimes just socially, for participating in things off campus. And so I think this is a great step for just kind of plurality and the religious expression that we all value.
It's an
I think that's
option,
awesome.
right? It's an option that families have. You don't have to do it, but you can. It's sort of in the same spirit of school choice. If families want to take
Right.
advantage of these programs, they can. I think it's wonderful.
Right.
All
My
right,
third
your
thing.
turn.
Yes, my third thing here that has caught my attention, and this is kind of like it's a little bit like the income tax deduction. This has to do with gambling deductions, gambling loss deductions. And Ashley, I know you are not a degenerate gambler. And so this is an issue that is not going to probably be personal to you. But you might not be surprised to know that people who gamble lose money when they gamble. And they lose money very often, right? And that's part of the problem. And for a moment, we're setting aside the fact that we have just incentivized gambling, legalized sports betting, all of those things in the state, which I've got issues with, but that has happened. And so as a result of bringing a lot of new gamblers onto the scene in North Carolina, there's a bunch of gamblers that are now saying, "Hey, I'm being taxed on everything and here is the way that this has been working is that you have to report your winnings. So if you win on a bet, you win $500, $15,000, those winnings are taxable. However, we all know that when you gamble a lot, you don't just win, you lose often, right? So you have all these bets where you lose $1,000, you lose $500. Those losses could not be deducted against the winnings. Now, we all know the math shows the reason why they have giant casinos all over the world and why there's so many sports books and sports betting companies is that everybody loses more than they win on balance. So when you become a gambler, you're not going to get more money on balance. But this allows those the gamblers to offset their losses against their winnings in their tax bill, so that they not only have not because the way the situation is right now is I'll lose $20,000 gambling, but then I had $10,000, but in some cases I won $10,000. So my net losses as an individual is maybe $10,000 over the course of the year. So I've lost $10,000, but I also have to pay taxes on the $10,000 that I won. And that's what the state has been trying to solve. Does that make sense to you? Or did I just confuse everyone? All right. Okay. So that's what the situation is. And so those are the facts, but the question I have, and I'd like to kind of discuss with you for a moment, get your thoughts on, is in light of our framework of rewarding good, punishing evil, where would we categorize the ability to deduct gambling losses? Because the gambling activity itself is not constructive and not helpful. We should not incentivize people to do that. As a matter of fairness, we're now treating gambling like all of our other losses, because we know in a business you make money, but you also lose money, and you can offset your winnings with your losses, right? Your business expenses is how you might call that. That's how we treat every other business. Now we're trying to treat gambling like every other business. Should we do that or not?
I think the question would be, does this further incentivize or entice people to gamble?
Yes. I think the answer is yes. Because it makes
So
the
given our
losses
framework, we
less
would not
dramatic.
like this. Yeah.
That's what I think.
I mean,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's-
It's kind of
there's a real
ironic
fairness
that you're
argument.
telling me about this while sitting in Las Vegas. We
Well,
didn't even talk about
we
that.
have not done, yeah, for those who are watching, wondering where I am, yes, I am presently recording from Las Vegas. I have gambled $0.00 and will intend to do that. This is my launch point to a hiking trip in southern Utah. But yes, I am
Disclaimer.
here. But yeah, but truly, yeah, no, you'll look behind me right now and you see all the evidence of the fact that the house wins, right? That's the whole, that's the game.
Yeah.
These casinos do not exist because everybody comes here and cleans them out. We all know that. So
Okay.
I
You
am
ready for?
Yeah. Go ahead and give me the next one.
Yeah. Do you have one more thing to say about?
Nope. Go for it.
Okay. All right. So the budget also included $3.5 million for the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Initiative. And this is the program that funds the PrEP program, which funds ECU's reproductive health training workshops that teach about sex education. And we've been, NC Values has been aware of issues with this PrEP program for a while in North Carolina. One of the problems with it is that the curricula they're using, it goes beyond the program's intent, which is teen pregnancy prevention, and teaches gender ideology things. Just a couple of examples. In the curriculum, it says that male and female are nothing more than what the doctor said they were when they were born, and that being gender queer is a valid category. It says not to use the words girl and woman, but instead to use phrases like person with a vulva. And teachers are told to ask children what pronouns they prefer, and students are told that someone with male genitalia might not necessarily identify as a boy or as a man. And so obviously we're against these kinds of any funding going towards this type of curriculum. And another problem with the PrEP funds is that they're being used to implement sex education programs that violate North Carolina law, which actually requires abstinence-based sex education, as opposed to, teaching kids how to properly use a condom.
Right. And this is a long-standing challenge in our educational system and kind of public health, is because everybody is a fan of quote-unquote health training, right? We want people to have basic education about their bodies and how to make good choices and how to be healthy. But there's so much value stuff that gets pushed into these programs that really is pushing the agenda that we're all familiar with now. And what you described there, a lot of that is just kind of gender ideology. That you got to get under the surface. The devil is very often in the details in education and policy in general. And that's where we see this. It's like, oh, we're going to fund public health. Well, great. We want the public to be healthy. And then you see, oh, well, that seems problematic. Is that health or is that anti-health? Right? That's the problem, which is why we have to be, in the details of all these things, because the temptation is just to have a headline, have a budget line item, pass it off to an expert and say, you go do your thing. And when that expert has been radicalized, the thing that they go do is not positive at all.
Yeah, well, I think what you said, you hit the nail on the head. These things really can't be taught from a values neutral position. Values are always going to be inserted in conversations about human sexuality. Yeah. And what framework are we teaching the children from? It's really important to be clear about that. And to be honest, I think probably the General Assembly isn't into these details. I mean, many of them may not know. They haven't looked up this curriculum and they're reading through. Oh, they're asking the students what pronouns they prefer in some of these. They may not know. So, anyways,
that's why you need watchdogs.
Yeah, yeah. This is something we're trying. I've published an op-ed on this. Is something we're trying to raise awareness for. At the very least, amending this curriculum.
That's right. Actually, before we wrap this budget conversation, a couple other things I think that are worth mentioning. Something that's not in there, we've discussed on the program before, the debate over $600 million for Major League Baseball in Raleigh was kind of one of the efforts, and that actually was a big issue that was debated before the budget was passed. That's not there, so...
I went home and I asked my husband about this.
Okay.
And he's very much, free market, capitalism, all that. Mm-hmm. But he was like, yeah, we should bring the baseball stadium. He had a lot of the same arguments that you did about, how it would stimulate the local economy and all of that. So
It's massive economic activity, but obviously the state legislature did not see it that way. And there are limits to funds, right? I mean, $600 million is
I think
not
they did.
a small number.
I think I saw the speaker say that it's not off the table forever. So
Okay, well, who knows? Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. It's just that I see why somebody would want to do that. I think there is a defensible argument for that.
sure.
Also, $3 million for a responsible fatherhood initiative, which was in the budget, and in the world of rewarding good and punishing evil, there is nothing better than responsible fatherhood. And we can track basically all of the problems that we have in the world right now to the fact that homes are broken and kids are not known and loved by their dads. And so $3 million isn't going to fix that problem. Of course, government is not really the place where that problem gets fixed, but there are conversations that we can facilitate and ministries that we can help support, where people who are, on the ground in their community, encouraging men to be better fathers, helping young men grow up to aspire to be a great father and have that be kind of their vision of the good life and what that means. Because that really is all the stuff we complain about. It just goes back to the blocking and tackling of human civilization, and that is great dads, great moms. So that's in there as well. The church is going to do a lot more on the fatherhood thing than the government ever can. But we certainly need the government to recognize it's a problem. So that's a small thing. I don't think have no reason to think it was controversial because everybody likes fatherhood. But it's in there, and we should know that. So
That's
I
good.
hope it works.
That's good.
Yes.
So there wasn't a lot of social policy in this budget, but there was one piece. There's a new way now to challenge books and other classroom materials in public schools. And it involves creating a committee to review parental challenges to materials that are in the schools that are obscene or age inappropriate for the children. And so those councils that will review those objections will be made up of principals and teachers, and I think a parent needs to be on it. And so this is a good. We think this is a good thing. There are books. We know we've worked with Pavement Education Project on this problem for many years. We know there are books in the schools that are obscene in North Carolina schools. We know that there are books that are just not appropriate for that age, and maybe they can be moved to a high school. And so this is a good thing to let the community be involved in filtering out some of these books that some of them no child should ever see. They should not be available. They should absolutely be removed from the books, from the shelves.
The problem I think we're trying to get in front of here is that a lot of parents had kind of filed their complaint in an email or with a voicemail somehow into the ether, and they never got a response, and nobody even, again, gave them the dignity of acknowledging the concern, much less providing a response on the merits. So this basically requires school systems to have a process that parents can use to actually know that they have been heard and get a response to it. Because, maybe the parents are overreacting. We don't know. And people will always disagree about what's appropriate and what isn't, but at least the parents aren't going to be ignored, which has kind of been the status quo. And so, this is, I think, improvement in the system to ensure that we are actually partnering with parents and not just telling the parents to go away because you're annoying. And that's how a lot of parents have felt about these things. So that's something else that's positive, I think, that we can be happy about in the budget. So, of course, it was hundreds of pages long. We have not covered everything. If you want more, you can find it with the assistance of the search engine of your choice. So go do that, all of you budget nerds out there. So, Ashley, anything else?
I think the only other thing to say is that, we have been hoping that the General Assembly will take action to protect girls' private spaces, girls and women's private spaces in North Carolina. This is, if you've been listening along and if you've been following us, you know that this is the campaign that we've been working on. We want boys to be prevented from using girls' bathrooms and locker rooms in K through 12 schools, in universities, in rape crisis centers, also in prisons. And so we have not seen them take action on this step yet, but we have had some encouragement, and we talked about this on our last episode, but the West Virginia versus BPJ decision is really helpful on this front because it shows that the court is saying that when Title IX speaks of women and girls, it means a biological woman or a biological girl. It doesn't mean a man who is identifying as a woman or a girl. And so that is helpful on this front because there has been there was a bad court decision that created some confusion in this space. And now that the Supreme Court has said this, it's really created some clarity. So hopefully that will help in some of the school districts. But we are still hopeful that the General Assembly will take action on this piece this session. And we are having as many conversations as we can with lawmakers so that they know that this is still happening in North Carolina schools. And the federal government is investigating. The Department of Education is investigating this happening in Buncombe County and Cabarrus County. So we do know that it's happening, and we hope that there will be a solution soon. Because really every day that we have the status quo and it's not made clear that in North Carolina boys shouldn't go into girls' bathrooms, we're really risking something bad happening in those spaces.
That's right. That has not been done yet, but we remain optimistic that it
We
will.
do.
So
We do remain optimistic on this.
vigilant. Remain vigilant and stay tuned because we'll tell you all about it. Thanks for joining us today. Friends on Politics for Happy People. Quick reminder that new episodes drop every Tuesday and every Friday. So make sure you look for the next one. Like and subscribe wherever you have found us so you don't miss it. We look forward to talking to you then.